So when you hear the term horror RPG, the first thing that might pop into your mind is something like Parasite Eve. But if you delve a little bit deeper, you might have also heard of a little series called Shadow Hearts. And today we are going to be looking at the first entry into the Shadow Hearts series, PS1 title known as Koudelka.
Too early, Angel. I'm not dead yet.
Not yet, but it looks like you're going to die soon.
Maybe. But you'll have to pardon me while I tend to some unfinished business first.
Business? What can you possibly accomplish in your condition? You can't even hold your gun steady.
Well, no unless I try. That thing's not gonna die unless I shoot it 2 or 3 times. Damn it! Here, use this.
Before we can even get our bearings, we are immediately thrust into our very first fight of the game with what I think is meant to be a werewolf. Now, on its surface, Koudelka seems like a very bog-standard turn-based RPG, and some of you might be familiar with the aspects of a normal turn-based RPG. Still, it's good to cover the basics, which is what this fight is meant for. So first, see what actions are available to us. Now, attack is pretty self-explanatory. That's our attack with our primary weapon. We have magic, which you might think we don't have any of right now, but yeah, we do have quite a plethora of magic, though right now it's all support, which we don't really need to cast. We also have items, which if we had any, we could use. And finally, we have weapon, which allows us to change our weapon on the fly. Now, we could use the knife we saw in the cutscene there, but that gentleman was nice enough to give us a pistol, and it will give us some range, so let's go ahead and use that. Now, you only get one action per turn. After that, you can either move or wait. Moving will allow us to move a certain amount of squares in the given arena. It's just for right now, we don't really need to do that, so let's just go ahead and wait out the rest of our turn and see what Mr. Werewolf does. So instead of attacking, he decides to start charging up, so let's go ahead and shoot him in the face. And if you were wondering what he was charging up for, it was a spell to buff himself up. Also, he is slowly making his way towards us, so after we shoot him a third time, we are now going to use our option to move away to try to get a little bit evasive. Though at this point, he is obviously going to catch up to us. Just a little bit too late for him to really retaliate, so let's go ahead and finish this. So for a successful battle, we not only got some XP, but we also got some booze, and most importantly, our very first offensive spell. But now that everything is relatively safe, I think we should check on that guy that almost shot us and see how well he's doing.
Hey, what about him?
He's dead.
Really? Thank you. So I guess my time is up. Hey, Angel. I'm not gonna ask you to take me to heaven. But will you pray for me at least?
Are you out of your mind? There's no bloody way I'm going to pray for you. But I guess I owe you because you saved me too. Payback time. Keep it down. Okay, let's go. Stand up or I'll leave you here.
What happened? It doesn't hurt anymore. I'm cured.
Yeah, and so I cured you, so what?
You? You cured me. But I was almost dead. I'm confused. So you really are an angel?
Don't be foolish. Do you really think that there are angels on Earth? I'm no angel. I'm just a medium with a little curing power.
I'm Edward J. Plunkett. I know I look pretty shady, but you don't look too wholesome yourself.
No, I'm not like you. And this is no place for people like you. Why did you come here?
I heard a rumor.
A rumor?
I heard something in London. That the son of some rich family bought an old monastery. Spent a ton of money to convert it into a house. I heard he brought quite a lot of harlots here. Seems like he was having a great time.
So, where is this monastery?
That's what I want to know. I came all this way to put a poor man's fear of God into this rich bastard. So far, I haven't found anything. Then this monster attacked me. I almost got killed. If you'd come any later, no doubt I'd be singing hymns in his stomach right now.
Shouldn't have bought such a good horse. She's too fast.
Too bad you won't be hearing me sing those hymns. When I was a boy, I was a pretty good soprano.
If you don't stop talking, I'll leave you here. My name is Koudelka, and I'm only going to say this once, so don't forget. If you want to get out of here alive, I suggest you stick very close. Got it?
Charmed, I'm sure.
And with those tense introductions out of the way, it's now time we learn a little bit more about Koudelka and our brand new party member, Edward. Now in the pause menu here, we do have quite a few useful options. The first of which that we are going to look at is the status screen. Now, there are a few stats, and we are going to be covering those a little bit later. For right now, I just wanted to look at the very basic stats of our health and our magic pool. You'll immediately notice that Edward, quite frankly, is quite a bit more beefier than Koudelka, so he is going to be our tank, while we're going to try to keep Koudelka at the back, and we're going to have her be our glass cannon / mage. You might have also noticed there that Edward currently is not really equipped with anything. And believe it or not, Koudelka for the game does not really focus that much on equipment. You might notice we don't really have much in the way of equipment slots, just a weapon, armor, and accessories. And even though we don't really need to, we're going to go ahead and equip Edward with a knife, just to give him a little bit more in the way of stats. Also, though it's not entirely necessary, if we go down to the formation option here, we can actually set where our party members start off. And what we want to do, or at least what I want to do, is make sure that Edward is as far up and ahead of Koudelka as possible, just because he is mostly going to be dealing in the melee range. So with all that set up, I think we might be able to finally start our adventure. Though, after that cutscene, you might very well be still in the dark as to what either of these characters' motivations currently are. But as we start exploring, our first room here does introduce a very odd mechanic, which is that little S symbol there. That indicates that this room allows us a temporary save. Yeah, this game is very much set up to be very survival horror. It has very limited resources, very limited save options, and you can get yourself in a very dire situation, so that's why they do set up the option for the temporary save. Also, you might have noticed this little speck on the ground here. This is our first pick-upable item. And even though it may not sound amazing, we do want to get as many of these potion / healing items as we possibly can. Because outside of Koudelka's healing, we don't really have a way to heal up as of right now. But yeah, even though we don't really have an idea of where we need to go, the path right now is pretty linear. Though it is going to be wrought with danger. Yeah, we are not going to be seeing the enemies ahead of time. This game goes with a normal RPG trope of randomized battles. And randomized battles we aren't going to be able to see or really prepare for the most part. The good thing is, since this is still the game trying to let you learn mechanics, the enemies right now are not really that dangerous. With a single swipe we can take down one of those cockroaches. And even though we probably don't need to, we do want to go ahead and have Koudelka use that brand new offensive spell we got. And you might be wondering, why are you moving closer? And even though it's not readily explained, distance does affect the amount of damage that a spell does do. Still, while we are charging up, that cockroach does get in a little bit of a swipe on Edward. That does give us time to unleash our fiery fury. Though it is just a little bit too weak right now to really get the job done. And Edward is going to get his revenge for getting poisoned from that little bit of an attack there by finishing off the cockroach. And even though that wasn't that much of an impressive victory, we do manage to get our first level up for Koudelka. And it shows off one of the more unique features of the game, which is that instead of just RNG determining where our stat points go, we as the player can control how our characters level up. And so it's now time to cover all these stats. First off, we have Strength, which is our physical damage. We have Vitality, which is our health and physical defense. We have our Dexterity, which is our likelihood to connect with physical attacks. We have our Agility, which is just the speed at which we can get our turn. Intelligence is going to be our magic damage stat. Piety is a bit of a weird stat because not only is it our magic defense, but it's also the likelihood of a spell connecting or healing up our party member. It's a bit strange. The mind stat is our likelihood to connect with a magic spell. And finally, luck. Very, very strange. As far as I can tell, it's supposed to be the likelihood that an enemy will attack you, along with a bunch of other weird under-the-hood things that I'm not entirely sure about. For right now, though, I do want to go ahead and put a point into agility, just to make sure that Koudelka keeps up, and just buffing up the rest of the pure magic stats, because I do want to try to keep her as our primary caster. But yeah, leveling in this game is pretty fun, because it allows you to kind of make Koudelka into whatever you want, Edward into whatever you want, and it kind of leaves things pretty open-ended. Also, we find some pistol rounds. You might have noticed that on the gun there it did say, I think, 5 out of 6, and that was the number of shots we had initially. Though after our run-in with that werewolf, we did expend a few of them. And that means that, yeah, believe it or not, the pistol does have a finite amount of ammo. And you might be wondering why I am refilling it outside of battle, and that's because if you do it inside of battle, it will actually use up a turn of your action. So that can be a bit nasty to learn on your first time. Now, while I did mention that right now the game is fairly linear, there are a couple little side areas we can go into, such as this attic here. And by exploring up here, we do find a map, which might sound useful, but in reality, if we do take a quick look at the map, we will find it's a little bit lacking, in that it's actually kind of confusingly set up. Most, I think, the check marks are rooms we've been, and red might be doors that are closed off. It's really not that useful. You can completely overlook finding the monastery map and be absolutely fine. Really, the thing that you want to get while you're up here is kind of hidden. Though, before we can get to that item, we do have another fight, and something I kind of want to cover here. There are going to be a lot of randomized battles. We're not going to see all of them, and sometimes they're just going to be sped up. In this case, speeding it up because we actually did just fight cockroaches, and I think these are just a palette swap of cockroaches. I think they are slightly stronger, but really they don't have anything else interesting about them outside of a little bit more health and a little bit more damage they can do. Still, that does give us our next level. We get to level up Edward, and yeah, we're going to try to keep with the prime physical stats for him, including an additional point in agility, just because right now he's not really going to have a problem missing any of his attacks. Yeah, the other item waiting for us up in the attic is right here on the table, though it's a bit easy to miss. And it's not that amazing sounding initially, but as I mentioned with the potion, you do want to try to get as many healing items as you can, because I don't know if you noticed, but the healing spell that Koudelka has costs a whopping 6 points, and right now our mana pool about 22 or 24, so yeah, we don't really have that many available charges on our healing. But here we have our first real crossroads of the game. We could head downstairs immediately. That is where we do want to head next. But first things first, I do need to take care of this reanimated suit of armor before we can continue. And as you can probably guess from it being a very heavily armored suit, it does have a little bit of increased physical resistance, though as this is still low level, it does take quite a bit of a beating from Edward's physical attacks. And we'll go ahead and have Koudelka here start charging up a flare, as I think that will do a reasonable amount of damage. And while you might think this guy might decide to smack Edward with his sword instead, he for some reason starts to charge up his own spell, and well, that pretty much seals his fate. Yeah, sometimes the actions of the AI are a bit questionable, though it does work out in our favor in the end. But yeah, the reason that we want to head down this way is not so much for the nearby door. Instead, as we make our way back, you might notice that Koudelka's attention turns to this painting here, and that means there is something interesting regarding the painting, and that is our first secret of the game in the form of this dirk. Now, something that you'll find as you progress through the game is that anytime you pick up a weapon off the ground, it's not just going to be a normal weapon, no, it's usually going to have a magic modifier. In this case, it's not just a dirk, it is a vital dirk. And that vital modifier means that whenever we attack with it, it will heal us for a little bit, though I do want to kind of save that for right now. I don't want to take away from our normal knife just yet. But yeah, the modifiers that you find on any weapons that you pick up are always going to be completely randomized, even from game to game. So if you play this yourself, that dirk might very well be an elemental dirk. It can be a bit of a mixed bag. You can easily get a weapon that's not that great, and it can make your journey a little bit more dangerous. Though I think we might be able to find some sanctuary nearby here.
How unusual that you two have decided to come to our rural district. There's really nothing interesting here.
It has gotten so cold outside. We weren't expecting any visitors. The soup is all we have. Please, have as much as you want.
Oh, yes, please.
Thanks. It smells great.
Wouldn't you like some, dear? Don't you like potato soup?
No. It's not that. I'm all right for now. Thank you for your hospitality, though.
No trouble at all. Please let me know if there's anything we can do. We are the only ones who live here, and it's so rare that we get any visitors.
So are you two really the only ones who live here?
Why do you ask?
Well, it was pretty foggy, so I couldn't tell for sure. But this building looked like an old church or something. Seems a little big just for the two of you.
You're right. In the 9th century, a saint from Ireland named Daniel Scotius built a place of worship here to appease monsters and evil spirits. That was how the Nemeton Monastery started. Or so I heard.
Monsters. Is that right?
Yes. What about them?
You might not believe this, but we saw a monster on our way here.
Is that so? You saw it too?
You mean that monster's been around for a while?
Well, we've been taking care of the monastery for a number of years, but from about 6 months ago, monsters have been appearing.
We see them more and more every month.
I used to be a sailor. I'm not afraid of any monsters.
Oh, dear. What if something terrible happens to you?
We almost got killed back there. Now we're out of bullets.
That's not good. The monsters might try and attack you again. I'll spare you some bullets.
Thanks, that'd be great.
Looking after others. He's so wonderful at that.
So, have you two been together long?
Yes, quite a while. Now, all he does is paint and maintain this old building. That's his daily routine. But back in the old days...
Thanks, Ogden. I owe you one.
What an incredibly amiable, albeit very out-of-place elderly couple. It almost would make one suspicious, especially considering they locked the door behind us. It's just... well, in retrospect, it does kind of make sense to lock the door, considering that the Nemeton mansion here is pretty much brimming over with monsters. It's not just the singular werewolf that we fought before. The world of Koudelka is just a menagerie of very, very odd monsters. Probably didn't seem like it initially with the oversized cockroaches or even the reanimated suit of armor. But yeah, here we are facing what appears to be a very quizzical ghost. And I don't know, it's a bit hard to tell. Maybe a marionette plant man? And considering that it could very well be a plant, that could mean that it is weak against fire? It's a bit hard to say, though. This does bring up a point that I have yet to make, and that is that there are 4 main elements in the game. There is fire, water, earth, and wind. And each one of those kind of balances out the other, so that they have strengths and weaknesses. In this case, assuming that this is a plant, I thought it'd be water-based, but seems that it is not weak to fire, which means that it either has very high magic defense, or that it is the opposite of fire, or strong against fire, which I think would mean that it would be earth-based. Really, in trying to figure all that out, it can be a bit trial and error based. There's not really any beastery in-game that I know of. Sometimes, though, the enemies do use magic spells that are kind of based around their strengths. In this case, that enemy just used an earth elemental spell, which means I guess it is earth-based. In the end, though, considering that I think it is a caster enemy, that means that it has low health and low physical defense, which means Edward was pretty easily able to take care of it. And with another successful fight out of the way, we do get another brand new weapon, which may seem a bit underwhelming. Normal club is just a piece of wood, but if we go ahead and equip it onto Edward here, we will see that it does give quite a bit in the way of strength and vitality, though it will make him lose a little bit of speed, but still, he's still a little bit faster than Koudelka, which means that, well, we can give Koudelka a little bit of a buff here. We haven't really been using the gun, and we're never actually going to be having her stab people. It's just, sometimes you just want to equip a weapon for the sheer stats that it gives. That's what I think what we call in the RPG world as a stat stick. But yeah, I just really can't get over how out of place that elderly couple was.
Now this would make good rations. Let's take some with us.
I can't believe it. Are you still hungry?
I didn't have anything to eat or drink for 3 days. Of course I'm hungry. Speaking of which, you wasted all of that food. What's wrong with you?
Yeah. If it weren't poisoned, then I would have had some.
Pardon?
I said, if the soup weren't poisoned, then I would have had some. Got it?
Poisoned? No way.
Just a little bit. I smelled some poisonous plant.
What's happening?
Oh, I can tell you how you're going to feel. In about half an hour, you won't be able to move your body. If you don't find an antidote, you'll definitely die.
So they really were trying to kill us. But why?
Don't know. But it seems they're quite used to doing it this way. They must be hiding something. Listen, Edward. I'm going to try to cure you now. But you have to promise that when I do, you won't get mad and rush back to that couple right away. It's safer if we pretend we're dead and continue exploring this building. I think we'll find something interesting for sure.
So it appears that the plot does thicken, as we find out that it's not just monsters actively working against our quest, but even nice old folks. And that just goes back to the entire question of, what is really going on in the Nemeton Monastery here? What has drawn Koudelka and Edward out here? I mean, Edward did make mention of hearing tall tales about some noblemen filling this place with harlots and having all-night sex orgies, but I don't know, that seems a bit far-fetched, even considering everything we've seen so far. And apparently it's a dire enough secret that the only humans we've run into so far have actively tried to kill us to hide that. The good thing is that, well, we were able to successfully dodge their poisonous potato soup, and now we do have something of almost the element of surprise. Though, it still leaves in question, what are we even looking for here? Well, outside of all the items that we are currently finding, such as that cheese and that brand new knife, we also have another addition to the monster menagerie of Koudelka with this floating eyeball. Now, it may seem like I'm killing things a bit too quickly and we're not really getting the full feel of these monsters, but trust me when I say we will be seeing plenty of them in the future. The monster encounters aren't by any measure sparse in this game. But this eyeball is, I think, another caster type enemy, so it is fairly weak to melee. And surprisingly, it's also fairly susceptible to the fire spell. Though you might have noticed that we haven't leveled up in a while, which does refill our health and mana. And we are down to 1 MP point for Koudelka, so that might mean we can't cast spells for a while. That is, if you don't make sure to pick up this item here. Yeah, the Listel is going to be our MP refilling item for the game, or at least one of 3 of them. And along with that, also find another lovely new weapon. And if you look really, really hard, you might notice a 3rd item in here and another pretty amazing weapon. Though, pipe may not sound amazing. Believe it or not, though, it is a pretty hefty blunt melee weapon. Does quite a bit of damage. We also did pick up a sword, though with the Mystic modifier, that means it will not do any direct physical damage. Instead, it will MP still, which could be useful. But, yeah, we don't really want to get Koudelka into melee range, and it does really lower her movement speed, so we're just gonna keep her with the Dirk. And for Edward here, I think the best choice is the Earth Hammer, because yeah, that is 10 points of physical strength, which is pretty good all around. And he has quite a bit in the way of health. Just kind of worried about Koudelka's MP at this point. And what's even more worrisome is that now the game is even warning us that something is just not right with this room. And it's not just this passed out gentleman here on the ground, no. There is a definite and real threat waiting for us somewhere in this garden. It's just going to take a little bit of pressing forward to find it. That's right, we are now inside of our first real boss fight of the game. It's going to be against this very ferocious and fearsome fauna. Though, you might be surprised to learn that this plant is more bark than bite. Because we are still technically in something of a tutorial area of the game, they decided to lob a bit of a softball at us by making the first boss not only susceptible to fire damage, but also pretty weak to physical damage. So, first things first, we want to go ahead and fill up Koudelka's MP. Get off plenty of flares. Next, we do want to make sure and move Edward forward, because another weird quirk about this plant is that it is very much planted in place. Now, while Edward's first attack is not that amazing, likewise, the plant's first attack, even though it is visually imposing, not really the most damaging thing in the world, especially considering that we are pretty far away from the boss, and we have been working up Koudelka's piety, so she is pretty strong against all magic attacks. Can't say the same thing, though, for this plant monster here, especially since it's wasting turns just trying to charge up spells. Also, overall, I think this plant boss only has about 1,500 to 2,000 health, so yeah, considering that we do almost 500 per turn, and in return it maybe does anywhere between, I'd say, 0 to 50? It's a pretty easy boss fight. Now, it has only used its wind spell so far, but this boss does have a few other attacks, such as the ability to swipe at Edward with its viney tendrils. And that does do about 25 damage, which is alright. But it also will apply a poison effect, which will do a little bit of damage every turn. Not a lot, maybe 4 to 10 right now. It also does have a ranged poison attack, but yeah, it's already dead. And for our first real victory of the game, Koudelka does reach level 3, which means we can pump up her agility and also her magic stats a little bit more. And not only that, but we get a mysterious new item along with a water spell, which is very nice. But our real reward is waiting back at the start of the room.
My head. Oh, what happened? Oh, yes, that's right. That monster. Oh. Who on earth are you two? Hey, we rescued you, and that's your way of saying thanks?
Little did I know that these days were into rescuing perfect strangers.
You.
My name is Koudelka, and this is Edward. Would you mind telling us how you ended up collapsed on this path?
My name is James. James O'Flaherty. I've been searching for something, and it took me to the monastery. Little did I know that it'd become a breeding ground for demonic spirits.
Then how did you get in here dressed like that?
Through the main gate, of course. The caretakers welcomed me with open arms.
That husband and wife team? And the food? Was there no poison in your food?
What are you talking about? Are you out of your mind?
Those caretakers tried to poison and kill us.
That's not funny. I find it inappropriate for you to try to dupe an upstanding believer of the Christian faith.
So nothing happened to you then?
Of course not. Not until I encountered that monster.
Yeah? And we're the ones who took care of that monster. Far be it from me to expect any words of gratitude from you.
I see. And I can tell from your appearances that the power of your faith alone was not enough to smooth things out with that monster.
It wasn't the kind of problem that faith alone could solve.
Ugh. Look at this plinth. It's broken now, but holy water ran from it until recently. But I've become distracted. Almighty God, please give me the strength to ward off these monsters.
I can see that we've wasted our time here. Let's go, Koudelka.
Just a minute. Although I'm under the protection of the Lord, it doesn't hurt to take precautionary measures. I think I'll go with you.
And no, that pissy priest isn't our present here. Instead, we finally get our first save point, which is a godsend considering we haven't had one for almost half an hour. And after all the trials and tribulations we've gone through, I think now's a good time to call it. So hopefully you will join me next time as we head more into the world of Koudelka. See you then.